the NFL draft. We were supposed to record this last week, and I understand it's a bit outdated because the draft was last week. But teams that won the NFL draft, I know there were a couple. I know the Jets are for sure one of the teams that we both have, but what teams did you think won the NFL draft?
And real quick, before we get into this, a shout out to Drew. He killed his first exam. Let's give him a clap real quick. He had exam Tuesday. He said biggest exam of his life. He killed it. So shout out to Drew, and he's gonna do great tomorrow too. A few teams I think that everyone's talking about already: Jets, Eagles, and Ravens. Right? We kind of know at this point. All the media outlets are talking about it. The Jets had a plethora of first and second round picks. The Eagles got A.J. Brown and a couple other guys, and the Ravens with their ridiculous class as well. But there's two teams that I kind of wanted to cover here that I don't think are getting as much credit as they should. And I thought had really good drafts. The first one's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, earlier in the offseason, I was labeled a Pittsburgh Steeler hater by a lot of people because, God forbid, I don't like Mitchell Trubisky being signed when they have Deshaun Watson and Joe Burrow and Lamar in their division. But I really liked what they did in this draft class. First pick, obviously being Kenny Pickett. You know, he wasn't my QB1 overall, but as long as you're trying to get a quarterback, that's okay with me. He might not have the highest upside, but he's going to come in right away and he's going to compete for his starting job. They have Mitch Trubisky there if Pickett isn't ready, or if they want to at least let Mitch start for the first couple of games, get Pickett, accustomed to being in the NFL. But at least you have a quarterback now. You have someone the fans could get around, and, people in the building too. Like, we have a franchise quarterback, which they haven't felt in a while. Obviously, Ben, the last few seasons have been on his last legs, and they didn't really have a replacement for him. Mason Rudolph is obviously not that guy. Duck Hodges is, God knows, he's not that guy. So first pick being Kenny Pickett, I thought was great for them. Round 2, George Pickens. He was my 5th wide receiver in this class. Had him ranked 5th ahead of guys like Chris Olave, who went 11th overall. George Pickens is a boomer bust guy, but when you go to the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're a wide receiver, there's probably an 80% chance you're going to be a superstar. He has all the physical traits to be able to do it. He's a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. As a freshman at Georgia, he led the team in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. You don't do that as a freshman unless you're a really elite player. He did tear his ACL in March of 2021, which is why he fell to the second round and why he didn't get as much hype as a lot of the other guys coming out. But in terms of just pure talent, athleticism, George Pickens is up there with all the rest of the guys in this class. Just a matter of, can he stay healthy? And in this landing spot, he's not going to be asked to do a ton, right? They have Deontay, they have Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris. So he's going to come in and be able to be that wide receiver 3. They lost James Washington. He's going to be great. And a couple of their later round picks, round 3, DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M. A lot of people had him grade as a day 2 interior defensive lineman. I thought it was really good value for them. Tuitt missed all of last season. Cam Hayward's going to be 33. He's a really good player. And then lastly, Calvin Austin from Memphis. Sauce Gardner actually said that he was the toughest wide receiver to guard in anyone he's guarded. So that's pretty high praise. So the Steelers are my winner. And the other team I want to highlight as well is the Falcons. Now, I know we had talks. I'm not sure if it was off air or on camera that we kind of went back and forth with what the Falcons do at the 8th pick. I thought they should go receiver. I think you thought more just best player available, edge, tackle, whatever it might be. But they got Drake London at 8 overall, which is a phenomenal pick. They don't have the quarterback figured out, which is fine. They have Marcus Mariota. They drafted Desmond Ridder as well. But at least at this point, the Falcons can build an offense. Now you have Drake London. You have Kyle Pitts, 2 big body just mismatches no matter where you put them up. And then we'll see what happens with Calvin Ridley. If Calvin Ridley is able to come back next season and you have Calvin Ridley, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, that's automatically going to be one of the top 10 weapons room in the NFL as long as Drake London progresses as we think he will. They also got a couple guys in the later rounds like Troy Anderson in round 3, one of my favorite linebacker prospects in this class, 6'4", 240, 4'4", 40. He played quarterback and running back in college as well. He's extremely versatile. And then in round 3, getting Desmond Ridder, taking a chance on a guy that there was mocks of him going in the first round. He has the talent. He has the leadership. He's going to be someone that could come in and process things really easily and quickly. So the Falcons are not getting talked about a lot, but I really like what they did in the draft.
Yeah, those are all some really good teams. I like what the Falcons did in the draft too, especially when it comes to their weapons room. And they all have Auden Tate. So Auden Tate with Drake London. I mean,
what was our number? What was our number on Auden Tate? We had a bet. Was it
800?
800.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he'll get it.
I love that. I love that. Now they got Drake London too.
Auden Tate, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Now I love that for the Falcons. Too. Cordero Patterson. I like that for the Falcons. And Drake Champagne Poppy made a bet that he was going to be the first wide receiver taken.
Damn.
And it did in fact happen.
He wasn't. Was he I don't think he was the favorite.
I don't think he was either.
Yeah,
I think it was Garrett
Wilson.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson. But Drake London was a phenomenal pick. I like Desmond Ridder too. We'll talk about that more when we talk about the quarterback situations and stuff. But for me, I feel like a lot of teams won the draft. Just starting out with the Jets, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Breece Hall, Jeremy Ruckert, Michael Clemens, Max Mitchell. Like, Michael Clemens is somebody who could probably be a starter. Like, he has the physical upside to be that. I don't want to get too in depth with the Jets because I know that we talked about them last episode, but the Jets hit a home run in this draft. There's no doubt about it. The Ravens, to me, won. I mean, everywhere they picked, they got the best player at that spot. Kyle Hamilton now makes up. The Ravens, to me, are going to have a top 5 secondary in football.
Stay healthy.
Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams. That alone is enough. Tyler Linderbaum now fills Bradley Bozeman now that he left. David Ojabo, who's probably going to redshirt this season, but he gives them the edge presence that they've needed. And Travis Jones, defensive tackle, who was the best player where he was picked. He can be a starter, fill in day one. Calais Campbell's future, even though he signed with them recently, it is still up in the air, so he can fill that need later on. Jalen Armour-Davis, I thought was a very good pick too. Isaiah Likely, who's a tight end, but it's kind of like a wide receiver too. Also, I like that pick a lot. So I thought they did a lot of good stuff in Charlie Kohler as well. They're just filling up this tight end room because we know they want to run the ball. That's their scheme. That's what Greg Roman likes to do. I thought they killed the draft. The Chiefs, another one. Trent McDuffie, who was one of my guys in the draft that I think very highly of. And the fact that he was there at pick 21, I thought was surprising to me. George Karlaftis, Sky Moore, Leo Chanel, like all these guys were really good picks. And the Chiefs, despite having one of the later picks in the draft, did well. Now, to shout out some of the teams that aren't very good, and I don't expect to be very good this season, but they filled some really dire needs. The Seahawks, Charles Cross, now replacing Dwayne Brown. They have their left tackle of the future. They drafted Kenneth Walker, who, whether you think it was Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker, people consensusly thought those were the top 2 running backs in the draft. We don't know what's happening with Chris Carson, Rashad Penny. Those 2 are always hurt. Boye Mafe gives them an edge rusher. Abraham Lucas, 4-year starter at Washington State. He can start right away at right tackle. The Seahawks in this draft essentially got their left tackle and right tackle of the future. And Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen. Tariq Woolen is 6'4" and ran one of the fastest 40 times at the combine. He is the prototypical Seattle Seahawk corner and one of those guys that you just bank on because he has such a huge upside. He did play wide receiver, so it's going to take him time to adjust. But the Seahawks cornerback room is very thin, so they're going to have opportunities to play quickly, and who knows, they can be very good. I thought the Panthers did well. Just Icky alone now solidifies their offensive line, getting Matt Corral. They needed a quarterback, and people have talked about Matt Corral as the best quarterback in this draft. At least Chris Sims did, and he's somebody who quarterback rankings tends to age really well. And then the Texans, I thought, made a lot of good moves. I think they drafted four starters in this draft. Stingley is going to start. Kenyon Green's going to start. Jalen Pitre is going to start. John Mechie is going to start. Christian Harris is going to start. That's 5 starters. I didn't even get to Damian Pierce, who could be 6 starters. The Texans legitimately drafted 5 to 6 starters in this draft alone, and all these guys have some legitimate good upside. I think John Mechie can be a 70 to 80 catch receiver. Christian Harris can be your starting linebacker. Derek Stingley, franchise corner. Kenyon Green, just a all-around good guard. And they're building their team slowly but surely. And all these teams, to me, just did amazing in the draft. And Ravens, Chiefs, we know they're trying to compete at the highest level. They filled their needs. Panthers, Texans, Seahawks, and Jets, all teams that have been at the bottom of the barrel but are now starting to build their team up. So I thought all these teams did really well.
It's funny that this is at least perceived as one of the worst draft classes you've had in a while, but I feel like all of the outlets, regardless of where you look, everyone had like A's and B's, right? There wasn't, I feel like in past years we saw way more C's, D's, and F's, but this year where there just wasn't a lot of consensus, so value was all over the place, that you got guys went in rounds 2 and 3 that people thought, oh, he could have been a late first round pick or an early second round pick. So it's interesting to see that you have all of these different opinions on players, and then once the draft is over, everyone came together and said everyone kind of had a really good draft. I think some of the teams you expected, like the Jets with all these first round picks, but then you have the teams like the Ravens who moved up and down the board, got a lot of talent, and the Eagles as well, and as you mentioned, the Chiefs. So it's all teams that are kind of in different places in their franchise. Like you said, some are competing, some are rebuilding, but even it seemed like the Texans, this was a perfect draft for them because, for one, they got a bunch of starters, but it's because their team is bad, right? There's not many guys on that roster right now that they see as long-term franchise-type players. So they were able to go and get a bunch of guys, even in rounds 2 and 3, that are going to go out and start for them right away just because the value is all over the place from all these different GMs and front offices.